Watch right now on the Front News Project. Shocking footage of explosions all across Russia. Panic is spreading in the rear, and this is just the beginning. Russian conscripts are fleeing en masse from military units. Desertion is rampant. A new trend for the so-called Second Army of the world. So Putin, is the special military operation still going according to plan? The Druzhba oil pipeline is under fire again. The Ukrainian armed forces are giving the occupiers in Pokrovsk a hard time. The main battle is beginning. Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front line. Watch right now. Greetings, Vladimir Timoshenko here with you. And we're starting right away with exclusive material. Ukrainian soldiers say that hitting Russian oil refineries is a special kind of pleasure. After all, it's the oil refineries that supply fuel to the occupiers' army. Plus, they burn especially fiercely and spectacularly. And so, the film crew of TSS journalist Natalia Nagornaya managed to witness how Ukrainian drones are sent to strike Russian military targets, and then track the specific results of these strikes in Russian social networks. Let's see all the details.
What exactly
is this? We didn't go to the oil depot anymore. It's burning.
This is the launch point for our long-range drones. A secret location. Because it's right here that preparations are made for deep strikes to launch drones far into the enemy's rear. The fighters of the 1st Battalion of the 14th Drone Systems Regiment are in high spirits.
Just incredibly happy.
But they say the real emotions are still ahead. This is a dose of Ukrainian fury flying to deliver revenge in Russia. And we'll be waiting for the results. Kasper, the battalion commander, is showing us the aircraft. And in moments like these, you always want to be close to your own people.
Today's flight, you know, is like it used to be, Kyiv to Moscow. Today, our flight is Ukraine-Russia, and it's going to be fun. It will be funny, beautiful, burn, and blaze. I think it will ignite so much they won't know what hit them.
Kasper warns that you can't let your guard down here. The Russians are constantly searching for where our drones are launched from.
Listen, it's always dangerous.
The launches are happening on the Day of Remembrance for the Fallen, so today the names of our brothers are here.
For all the fallen.
And not just for the adults. We know that the drones will fly toward Russia. But as for exactly where, we can only guess.
There's more than one oil refinery.
Look.
If some refinery is on fire, that's not us. Those are some good drones. No one knows who launched them.
The information about how many aircraft crossed the border will also be kept secret. How many planes are taking off?
I'll just say enough.
I'll just say enough. Remember how it was with Rolls-Royce? What's the engine power? Enough.
But the operation can be considered a success even if just every third drone breaks through Russian air defenses.
These are our...
Flying brothers in arms. We wish them luck.
These drones are smart.
It already
Knows its target where it's flying.
And expensive.
But just however.
The damage they will cause will be multiplied by a factor of XXX, so all of this is economically justified.
And for each drone, this is a one-way trip.
It will be death for Ukraine.
Good luck.
Good luck, go on. And now, on command, they rise into the sky one after another. Kasper says we'll learn about the consequences of their arrival from outraged Russians.
Already.
There are enough such stories these days. Why us? Well, friends, you are all involved. Why us? That's how it is.
Now all we can do is wait. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Krasnodar region,
That looks like a UAV, I think. What is that?
it's already spraying. Residents of the region report that near Gelendzhik they hear sounds that, I quote, resemble explosions. In Krasnodar, they're counting the so-called bangs. The local head urges city residents to remain calm and trust only official sources.
So,
The so-called official sources report that there were 8 explosions, the drones were flying low and buzzing. A fire broke out, but right now they don't know exactly what's burning.
There, the oil refinery is on fire. You can see it in Lunovsko.
Residents are being asked not to take photos or record videos.
There it goes again.
Then they clarify, only debris fell. Only one technological unit was damaged. The fire covers an area of 300 square meters. Apparently 30 drones were destroyed. And yes, it was an oil refinery with a capacity of 3 million tons of fuel per year. traffic is being restricted in Volgograd and Sochi, and ground traffic is also being blocked on the Yablonovsky Bridge and nearby streets.
We didn't go to the oil depot anymore. They said they'd get there themselves. But it's really blazing over there, you can tell by everything.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones continue to keep coming relentlessly.
You can hear it. Look, it's flying. El, do you see there's a drone flying over there? There. That's...
Already the Samara region, the city of Syzran, an even more powerful oil refinery. 8.5 million tons of fuel per year.
They're probably shooting at it. We really need to get out of here. All of Samara is covered in smoke. Everything's black. Look, something's exploding again. Look, another drone in the sky.
Judging by the local comments, this isn't the first time there have been strikes here.
Chesung pose again, he says, damn it.
Quiet, don't touch it. You can hear announcements asking Russians not to go outside. All planes are currently being stopped at the local airport.
Let's go, or they'll shut down Samara completely. We won't be able to get in at all.
Officially, they report that the drone attack was successfully prevented, and they only mention an attempt.
It's burning.
While Russian oil refineries were burning, the night in Ukraine was not easy. Shayheads and ballistic missiles were flying at us, but the attacks did not go unpunished. And
Here is another very telling story from the enemy's side. The number of deserters in the Russian army is growing catastrophically. Driven to the front by force or foolishly signing a contract, Russians, having tasted the horrors of Putin's war and the cruelty of their commanders, are dropping their weapons and fleeing. Risking imprisonment, but at least staying alive. More details about this in our report.
The number of deserters in the Russian army has at least tripled over the past 2 years. The Idaitlezam project, which helps people avoid mobilization in Russia, has published statistics on requests from those wishing to desert from Putin's army. For example, in the summer of 2023, there were only 381 such requests on the organization's website, but by the summer of 2025, that many deserters are reaching out to activists every month. And over the entire summer, the number of draft dodger cases reached 1,171.
Most of the deserters are contract soldiers, including former conscripts who are being forced to sign contracts, and those recruited from pretrial detention centers continue to seek help as well. More and more often, those who had been putting off making a decision for a year, hoping for a truce, are now coming back. The number of people deceived by promises is growing, and those who are forced either to hand over their money or go into battle, where, according to the soldiers themselves, the chance of dying reaches 90%.
However, other Russian activists insist that the figures provided by the organization and Idaitlezam are significantly understated. The project in its research relies exclusively on the number of appeals made specifically to their organization. Russian journalists assert that the actual number of deserters from the Russian army is much higher.
During the war, more than 18,000 soldiers in Russia have been convicted for desertion or unauthorized absence from their units. But these numbers are very, very approximate. Official statistics on such cases stopped being published in 2023. They were classified by order of the FSB and the Ministry of Defense. Obviously, this is to conceal the scale of desertion.
Meanwhile, desertion in Russia is becoming a widespread phenomenon. Now, even those who went to fight out of conviction are fleeing from the front, analysts explain. Kremlin propaganda is no longer effective on the front lines. In its place, blocking detachments are now appearing at the front. The Russians themselves, who were lucky enough to escape, talk about execution squads that have no qualms about opening fire on their own men.
Climbing over the barbed wire, there are barbed wires. It's like a table with barbed wire. Climbing over in pairs in autumn gear, but there they split up into pairs. They went. And when they finally climbed over the barbed wire, nothing happened, neither with her nor with her. Yes, such terrain appeared. It was cut up, full of ravines and hills. Completely underground, it popped out. And I won't say that you're far enough from the front, about 25-30 probably, so there are no Wagners there. We argued, somehow stood there, but I believe God saved us. God simply saved us. because one of their Dugas flew by on its own and didn't notice. The second one, their Duga fired directly. Of course, we didn't climb over them. They fired from behind the port tribe. Then we sat down, finished them off too, and then kept control. A volley of shots, and then we flew on.
Georgie was lucky. After many months in hiding, he was finally able to leave Russia. However, not everyone is so fortunate, admits the former mobilized soldier. According to him, almost every other Russian deserter at the front is caught and simply erased, or they're sent on an assault, which is basically a death sentence. So it turns out all the numbers need to be multiplied by at least 2.
Experts believe that the total number of deserters could reach up to 60,000 people. That's about a tenth of the entire army.
And this number will only keep growing. After all, desertion, despite the threat of being shot, is sometimes much better than living like this in a trench, without uniforms, shelter, or provisions. This is the kind of water we drink.
Do you understand? Then so,
Why be surprised when entire regiments and units of incurably ill soldiers are being formed in the Russian army? These are separate units made up of servicemen with HIV, hepatitis, tuberculosis, and other serious diseases. Such soldiers are sent to assault units along with deserters and those who do not want to fight for Putin.
How terrifying. Now let's see who can eat the cookies the fastest. In such a
situation, desertion from the front, even at gunpoint, doesn't seem like such a hopeless idea. On the contrary, as activists from the Go to the Woods project assert, fleeing becomes the only reasonable alternative in Putin's army. And so, analysts say, the number of deserters in the Russian armed forces will grow exponentially.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Novopavlovsk direction of the Russian armed forces. Things are getting brutal here as well. According to the General Staff, on the Novopavlovsk direction, the defense forces repelled 22 enemy assaults in the areas of Komishuvacha, Zeleny Hai, Obratne, Olhivske, Oleksandrivka, and in the direction of Ivanivka, as well as Sosnivka. And in recent days, Russian monsters once again brutally shelled Ukraine's pearl by the sea, Odessa. 3 people were injured as a result of the massive attack on Odessa region. By morning, the enemy had launched about 15 attack drones at the regional center alone. They targeted energy infrastructure and railway junctions. However, thanks to the work of the air defense, most of the drones were destroyed in the sky. Some, however, managed to break through and hit residential apartment buildings. It was only because people went down to the shelters that mass casualties were avoided. More about the morning shelling. Journalist from TSN Serhiy Osachuk will tell and show you more. Around
4 in the morning, a swarm of Shaheeds attacked the city from 3 directions at once. Most of them attacked from the sea and approached at high altitudes to complicate the work of the air defense. The main blow fell on the Primorsky district. In this building, not a single window survived, and in one of the apartments, there's a hole in the wall. The Shahed crashed and exploded right in the children's room. The apartment resident explains how she and her 14-year-old son managed to avoid death. I
woke up, went and woke up my child. I said, let's probably go downstairs because it was very loud and he doesn't always agree to go down, but this time he calmly got dressed. I said, come on, hurry up. We went down to the basement and about 10 minutes later there was an explosion. Then they said it was on our floor and that a fire had broken out there. We went back up and a neighbor gave me another fire extinguisher. I tried to put out something there, but there was so much dust, everything had collapsed. There's nothing left at all if you take a look.
Residents are gathering in the courtyard of the damaged apartment building. People need to fix their windows and doors because it's getting colder outside. Utility workers have arrived here to quickly clear away the debris scattered all over the road. Right now.
We are holding a meeting with the residents. Emergency headquarters are being set up and utility equipment is at work. The main task for today is to seal up people's windows and doorways as much as possible and to process documents for material assistance through the city council. We have the Unbreakable Odessa program, which helps us do this quite quickly.
Medical staff provided assistance to the victims and then sent them home. Many Odessa residents needed psychological support after the morning shelling. This was reported by the State Emergency Service.
The work of the state emergency service units was complicated by repeated air raid alerts, which forced our rescuers to stay in shelters.
This is what the Odessa Sports Palace looks like at the moment. It was attacked by 4 strike drones at once. The explosion destroyed the ice rink where preparations for hockey competitions were underway. The cooling system was completely burned. The machine that forms the ice surface was also destroyed by fire. Residents of the neighboring building, now without windows, are rescuing stray animals. They really took a hit. He
was very scared because he lives behind the building, and the strike landed nearby. Now he has nowhere to go. The place where he stayed has been destroyed. It was extremely loud. There were 4 strikes.
Another Shahed drone attacked the upper floors of the neighboring new building. There is also destruction inside. The management of the sports arena says the most important thing is that everyone is alive, and the restoration will be carried out very quickly. They already have experience with a similar attack 2 years ago.
Well then, let's analyze the current situation on the much-suffering Pokrovsk front line. The situation here is, as usual, stretched to the limit. On the Pokrovsk front, our defenders repelled 43 enemy attacks in the areas of the settlements of Shakova, Volnaya, Kotlina, Novopodgorodny, Novoekonomikeskoy, Rodinskoy, Mirolubovka, Pokrovsk, Zvereva, Promen, Lisovka, Udakhnaya, Dakhnaya, Novoukrainka, and towards Novopavlovka. Yes, the occupiers are preparing a fall offensive. And yes, Pokrovsk is at the very epicenter of it. To this end, the enemy is amassing forces and resources in the city. However, the defense forces are controlling the situation and holding their positions on the Pokrovsk front. We will tell you what is happening on the front lines at this very moment in our military report.
Our troops are advancing and reclaiming Ukrainian territories. Successes in Novopavlivka and near Kostiantynivka. A treacherous strike by the occupiers on a humanitarian mission. The Russian armed forces confirmed that they targeted the demining group specifically, the largest Russian troop rotation of the year. The rout of the enemy group near Dobropilya continues. And also Putin's plans for the fall offensive. Will the Russians be able to achieve success in 2025? All the latest frontline news right now. Another cynical crime by the Russian military. In the Chernihiv region, the Russians deliberately struck workers of a humanitarian demining mission from the Danish Refugee Council. At the moment, it is known that 2 people have been killed and 5 wounded. At the same time, the Russian armed forces confirmed the strike, presenting it as an attack on Ukrainian armed forces UAV units. However, when it comes to fighting real soldiers, not imaginary ones, the Russians aren't doing so well. The hottest front of recent months, Pokrovsk, is holding out and giving the enemy a worthy response. This is according to the Ukrainian command. Attempts to encircle the city are also failing completely, day after day.
The encirclement of Pokrovsk from the west also could not be revived, despite Russian tactical successes in the villages of Udakne and Kotlin. Similarly, on the western flank, the Russians failed to enter the territory of Dnipropetrovsk region. It is worth noting that the offensive here is purely propagandistic in nature. The Russian command wants to claim control over a part of the region where even in 2022, hardly any Russian soldiers set foot. However, at least in the Pokrovsk direction, the Russian armed forces are not succeeding despite many months of shelling the administrative border with endless assaults.
Even the reserves brought in from the north are not helping the Russians achieve their objectives. As a result of the largest redeployment this year, tens of thousands of additional Russian troops were transferred to the Pokrovsk area. This weakened the Sumy direction, but the occupiers had already lost interest in it due to their constant failures.
In the Sumy direction, the Ukrainian defense forces have seized the tactical initiative. At the moment, the maximum depth of advance by Russian occupation forces is no more than 4 to 5 kilometers. The Ukrainian defense forces are successfully liberating settlements in the Sumy region that had been under temporary control of the Russian occupation forces. And at this point, Russia is forced to admit this. Their plans for the Sumy region have completely failed. This is precisely why the 155th Marine Brigade is being redeployed back to the Pokrovsk direction.
Meanwhile, the newly arrived reserves have already been engaged by the Ukrainian armed forces. Just recently, 4 fighters from the Skala unit managed to capture twice as many enemy soldiers during their very first combat mission. In other words, they captured almost an entire squad of occupiers. So our exchange fund has been replenished with 9 Russians.
They said, drop your weapons, so I dropped my rifle, took off my body armor, Don't move today, just sit still, everything will be fine. They treated us calmly, gave us some water to drink and even some snacks.
Another area where Russian prisoners are now counted by the dozens is near Dobropilia. The salient that the occupiers managed to create has been cut off, and there is no prospect of success for the enemy there.
We can already say that the exchange fund of Ukraine's defense forces has been replenished with more than 60 Russian occupiers. And according to the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the total losses of Russian occupiers in the Dobropilia direction have exceeded 1,000 personnel in just a week of fighting. These are extremely serious losses for the Russian occupation army.
At the same time, under such difficult conditions, the Ukrainian armed forces still manage to advance. For example, in the past 24 hours near Kostiantynivka, the northern part of the settlement of Katerinivka was liberated. Our defense forces have also advanced west of Andriivka-Klivtseve, continuing to push back the occupiers' bridgehead in the Novopavlivka direction.
The Ukrainian army is struggling, no doubt, but right now it is even counter-attacking. Yes, these may not be large-scale counter-offensives, but nevertheless they are very serious retaliatory strikes. And even on that very Dobropilia salient, where it seemed many were saying, here it is, the front is collapsing, the Russian army has broken through. But no, the Ukrainian armed forces counterattacked, stabilized the situation there, and now the movement is going in the opposite direction.
And experts say that the Russians have nowhere to expect significant successes from. For example, analyst Pavel Norozhny believes that for the Russian army to advance now, they need armored vehicles. Otherwise, small infantry groups have virtually no chance. But the Russian leadership is not providing infantry with equipment, and there has been no air support at all for about half a year now.
The use of Su-25 aircraft, which used to operate right near the front line, has almost completely stopped. The use of helicopters has also practically ceased. And if they are used, they are also used from a very long distance. Or it's just some kind of demonstration firing to make a video for Aria Novosti or TASS. In general, Russia stopped risking its aviation quite some time ago, and by 2025 these risks are virtually eliminated.
At the same time, the Russian press continues to talk about a victorious autumn offensive. According to Vitaly Hizak, commander of the 423rd Battalion of Unmanned Systems, it will be even more disastrous than the summer offensive. After all, with the arrival of cold weather, there will be no so-called greenery. This means that enemy concentrations will become more visible, something our drone pilots are already eagerly anticipating.
The enemy's offensive priorities are clear today. We should also mention, of course, the activity and the very difficult and extremely challenging situation in the Lyman and Siversk directions. We are also seeing a difficult situation in the Kupiansk area. Of course, we are talking about Zaporizhia, because in Zaporizhia, the enemy is also actively using, let's say, corresponding diversionary actions. But the main focus is Donetsk region.
Donetsk region is a priority for us as well. And not just on the front line, but also in the rear, as the occupiers were reminded the day before in the city of Selidov, where an entire ammunition depot was blown up right under the nose of the Russian command. And
now let's move to the Lyman direction of the front, a bloody bacchanalia. The enemy's army continues its actions here as well. In the Lyman direction, the enemy attacked 17 times, trying to advance near the settlements of Karpivka, Rekivka, Seredny, and towards Drobyshev, Shandryholov, and Darilov. Meanwhile, Ukrainians are testing new interceptor drones equipped with artificial intelligence systems, while the occupiers have begun using new kamikaze drones. More about the latest developments in UAV technology, both in the enemy's pseudo-army and within the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine, in our next report.
new technologies, new challenges, artificial intelligence, having already conquered advanced gadget users, is now being widely used in warfare as well. Today, almost no modern drone is produced without this technology. Ukrainians are naturally among the leading UAV designers, and our developers are already actively testing a new interceptor drone. The Ukrainian company Varta is working on implementing an autonomous system for detecting and tracking enemy reconnaissance UAVs and FPV drones for interceptor drones based on artificial intelligence.
Individual components of the artificial intelligence system are indeed already being used in the war that Russia has unleashed against Ukraine. Ukraine is defending itself with technologies that help save human resources, especially when it comes to time. Ukraine is defending itself by using technological components that maximize the effectiveness of drones in the final meters of their approach to the target, when control over the device is already being lost.
It is reported that the drone will be called Varta Dozor A1 and is already in the final phase of testing. Its main task will be to destroy Russian strike UAVs, which are launched daily against peaceful cities in Ukraine.
We're talking about Geran, Gerbera, Porodia, and other drones. Overall, as of today, Russia is capable of producing and deploying between 5,000 and 6,000 drones per month. The largest attack we have seen so far involved up to 500 drones. But in order to carry out such an attack, Russia needed at least 3 to 4 days to accumulate them.
It has been stated that the Dozor A1 will be able to independently detect and destroy enemy FPV and reconnaissance UAVs even under Russian countermeasures. This means the drone can be used directly on the front line, where there are targets for it literally every minute, since Russia has recently significantly increased its use of drones.
After the initial strike, the enemy aircraft or drone detonates, and its rapidly expanding shrapnel effectively destroys the enemy drone, rendering it completely inoperable.
However, drone warfare, as they say one-on-one, still allows for the possibility of a miss. No matter how hard artificial intelligence tries, some Russian drones are also equipped with countermeasures. That's why engineers are already working on improving the Dozor A1.
In the future, there are plans to integrate it with situational awareness systems, in particular the Delta system. If this is implemented in the future, it will allow a single operator to control a group of 5 to 7 interceptors, creating the concept of the so-called small sky, a segment of air defense where interceptor drones will play a key role.
Russian designers are also trying to catch up with our engineers. For example, one of the enemy's new products is the CAD's BM-35 drone. A video of its use in the center of Sumy recently appeared online. Our experts are currently studying the characteristics of this UAV. It is not yet known what kind of warhead it can be equipped with. However, the lawnmower engine and the propeller drive system indicate that the drone does not fly far and will not be used against military targets. And it was obviously developed specifically to terrorize civilians in frontline cities.
We are fighting against a truly dangerous, relentlessly aggressive enemy who absolutely does not value human life at all. And we need to be very careful about the changes that are happening there. Temporary equipment may exist on the territory of the Russian Federation. Russia may circumvent sanctions to produce prototypes. They cannot circumvent sanctions when it comes to mass production, when there is a need to produce 1,000 units. They are demonstrating an inability to manufacture drones independently.
This thesis was confirmed by the work of Ukrainian experts who examined the remains of the BM-35 at the crash site and found that about half of the components were of foreign origin.
The drone's design contains at least 41 foreign components, including parts from Switzerland, the USA, and Taiwan. At the same time, most of the parts come from China.
According to analysts, one of the significant levers of influence on the situation could be the tightening of US and European sanctions, as well as more thorough enforcement of existing restrictions. After all, the more Russian loopholes are closed, the fewer drones will end up flying over Ukrainians' heads, while at the same time, we need to develop our own technology so that Russia receives an adequate response for every new terrorist attack.
And now an analysis of the operational situation on the Kramatorsk and Toretsk fronts. Let's be honest, these are sacred targets for Putin and his entire gang. Accordingly, the situation here is also stretched to the limit. On the Kramatorsk front, the defense forces repelled 4 enemy attacks in the areas of Markove, Orikhovo-Vasilivka, and in the direction of Stupochki and Minkivka. On the Toretsk front, the enemy carried out 8 attacks in the areas of Poltavka, Sherbinivka, and in the direction of Pleshchiyivka. Meanwhile, tensions are rising. Ukraine has once again attacked the Druzhba oil pipeline station in the Bryansk region, as well as the Ilsky oil refinery in the Krasnodar region. And here's another surprise for the Kremlin. The largest Ukrainian drone manufacturer will build a factory in Britain. At the same time, Putin might invade Achilles' heel. Seizing the Suwałki corridor would effectively cut off the Baltic states from their Panata allies. Here are all the details. They are destroying the enemy and reclaiming Ukrainian territories. The Ukrainian armed forces have liberated the village of Vladimira in the Kavdonetsk region and have also pushed the occupiers back from 3 other settlements. According to analysts, Ukrainian forces have pushed Russian troops back from Razinovo, Zolotoye Koltso and Novotoretskoye.
The advance of Ukraine's defense forces in the Razin area removes from the agenda the possibility of establishing direct control over the main location of Ukraine's defense forces. This is the highway in the Rodinskaya area. This is a significant tactical success for Ukraine's defense forces. Regarding Zolotoye Koltso and Novotoretskoye, these are in the Pokrovsk direction, which indicates stabilization measures by Ukraine's defense forces in this area.
And while the occupiers are counting their losses at the front, in Russia they are counting their financial losses. The armed forces of Ukraine attacked the Ilsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai with drones. The Druzhba oil pipeline was also hit once again, this time in Naitopovichy Bryansk region. This facility is of strategic importance for supplying petroleum products to the Russian occupation army. But the enemy is not idle either. On Sunday night, Russian terrorists launched a combined attack on Ukraine with missiles and drones. The number of weapons used in this attack was the largest since the start of the full-scale invasion. For the first time during the war, the building of the cabinet of ministers in Kyiv's government quarter was damaged during the attack. There were also strikes on the Kryukiv bridge over the Dnipro in the Poltava region.
According to
the British publication, the largest attack on Ukraine indicates the Russian dictator's unwillingness to end the war. And the shelling of the Ukrainian government building is a deliberate element of Putin's strategy. This is what foreign observers are writing.
The main target audience of these demonstrative actions by the occupation army, first and foremost, it is the American establishment. Moreover, I would note that once again the strikes on both the government quarter and the logistical infrastructure of the Ukrainian side, as well as on the energy system of Ukraine's economy, are taking place on the eve of Trump's meeting with European leaders.
Already on Sunday night into Monday, the aggressor country launched a new massive attack on Ukraine's energy system. One of the thermal power generation facilities in the Kyiv region came under attack.
Unfortunately, the Russian Federation is increasing the number of strikes on energy facilities within our country. This has already become a constant tactic of the Russian occupation forces, either at the start or during the heating season, to plunge Ukraine into darkness, both literally and figuratively.
In the fight against the occupiers, Ukraine is doing everything possible, developing its military-industrial complex. The largest Ukrainian drone manufacturer will build a drone production plant in the United Kingdom. The company plans to launch serial production at the beginning of next year.
In addition to the United Kingdom, there are large-scale joint drone production projects planned in Denmark, Germany, and several other European countries. This is evidence that European partners understand the need for Ukraine's defense forces to increase the number of strike capabilities. First and foremost, this refers to strike drones with a range of over 1,500 kilometers. Accordingly, the production of FPV drones is also being scaled up.
Meanwhile, Putin may be preparing for yet another war. The Russian dictator might attempt an invasion of NATO's Achilles heel, the Suwałki corridor.
At the moment, Russia has not escalated this issue in light of international efforts, primarily from the American side, to end the war in Ukraine. In other words, we can view this as an element of military political pressure on European partners and the United States. That is, the Russian Federation is proposing a scenario of non-interference in the internal affairs, primarily of Poland and the Baltic states, and their possible occupation in exchange for concessions on the Ukrainian issue. And what is being discussed are territorial concessions from our country. First and foremost, this refers to the complete control of Russian occupation forces over the territory of Donetsk region.
Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War have noted that the Kremlin's head is making long-term rearmament plans, while Moscow intensifies the mobilization of the Russian population and economy. That's all for today, but very soon on the Front News program, there will be new, unique materials from our journalists gathered from the hottest spots of the war so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Subtitles editor I. Boykova,